remain sober. Don't drink liquor and all the game's over. Need a plane, I explain it to my broker. 3 bots in the hood, top down, and ain't over. You know there's more, man, where that come from? Me and Kuda Love rolling back to back in one. See, the names have all changed since I've been around, but the game ain't the same since I left out.
And the next pick in the 2022 NBA draft is Johnny Davis.
Let me tell you about Johnny Davis. This kid is special with a capital S. He's an incredible shooting guard.
The toasted cheddar chalupa is back, only at Taco Bell.
I win so much they wanna know who I'm coached by. Every day approached by chicks when I was multi. Wanna give me soul side, but I'm like, don't try. I see the hisses and the disses when I go by, but see the misses on my wrists when I float by. Self-control and I can't tell you no lie. Trying to find a soulmate, you end up being soul tied. I make my money, man, without the coca. Living la vida without the loca. I'm down south, so they show me country love, and I ain't even country thug. The people give me daps and hugs, so it must be love. And I love the country grub. It feel good to hear people singing welcome back. And I ain't even selling the track, cause I'm that Harlem cat. The names have all changed since I've been around, but the game ain't the same since I left out. I've been around, but the game ain't the same since I left out. Ooh, you know we need you. Ooh, you know we need you. Here's where we need you. Here's where we need you. Welcome back. Welcome back. You know you like that. Welcome back. Welcome back. You know you like that. You know you like that. You know you like that. What? You know you like that. Come on. You know you like that.
What's going on, everyone? It has been a long minute since we've last chatted, and I am stoked to be back on the stream and talking to you guys. Yeah, so I basically had a couple bouts of sickness, and then I was traveling. I was in Ireland for a little bit at UAV Expo, or sorry, no, Exponential, and you know, just staying busy. But I'm glad to be back. Today we have a good collection of guests that we'll be talking to about the drone industry, like always, and trying to get back on this Tuesday cadence. We did try one of these daytime ones right before I dropped off, and it seemed to work all right, but I think that it's going to take a minute before we get that traction again. I apologize for losing that consistency. Hopefully it doesn't happen again. But really happy again, like I said, to be here and to share some new stuff that's going on in the industry. Obviously, with Exponential happening, there was quite a few launches and different discussions that were happening there that we can you know, attach ourselves to it, and you know, even Don Zoldi, who's the first guest tonight, we met for the first time face to face at Exponential, so it'll be good to kind of talk a little bit about the show, talk about what we're seeing in the industry, and see what you guys have on your minds. So for myself, it's been now 2 weeks that I announced my joining of at Enterprise UAS. I was kind of in this weird limbo spot with Atlas UAS for a while. Atlas was a European tricopter manufacturer, and I had been with them for almost a little over 6 months until I left, but it was just getting difficult to put their technology in the US due to FCC certifications and some other things. And I do wish those guys well, and that they're going to be able to work that out and bring their technology, which is really solid stuff, to the US market. But I made the move to jump over to Enterprise UAS, and basically just fostering my addiction of evangelizing this technology, bringing it to people's ears and minds, and trying to paint the picture of what can be done with it as we move forward. So I've been doing like a couple different like interviews and things like that over the last few weeks, and that question kind of came up about what technologies that I'm excited about moving forward, what things are on the horizon. And I think that something that I've stated for a while, and I want to state now, is that to me, where the technology is at in the uncrewed space is so significant as is, that there are so many things that can be done if we're only able to get more of these platforms into people's hands. It's well documented about how many people in the public safety space are already using drone technology. But you know, when you take that number even further, and you have more people using it, then I think that that's where you're gonna find the kind of like ROI, I guess, or the people are going to unlock what the technology can do, rather than needing to have more features or more things built into the drones that are coming out that will enable people to do more. So yeah, it's maybe kind of a rant, but I think it's important to stay focused, that there's so much stuff that could be done with how things stand today, and that we don't get trapped in waiting for the next thing before we really start unlocking those opportunities. And again, I think it's all about evangelizing and bringing the concepts to new people, new industries, and you know, as this proliferates further, broader net, there's just going to be people that are going to do more interesting and exciting things with it. So like I mentioned earlier, today I have Don Zoldi on first, and then I also have Troy Messler and Troy Nakan, who will be talking about a variety of different things within the drone industry. I think it's an interesting group, and not things that I always have at my disposal to talk about deeply. So I'm really excited to bring them on. Right now, I'm looking over and seeing that someone else joined in here, and I'm wondering if I can hold on one second. Damn it. Okay. So, anyways, so I'm gonna hop over and bring in Don, and we'll get started. Don, are you there?
I'm here. How are you?
I'm doing very well, and I'm just gonna make sure that everyone in chat can hear you. We every once in a while have technical difficulties because it's hard to test on your own. So I assume that you can relate with all the content creation that you do.
Absolutely. There's never a dull moment, Randall.
Perfect. Well, yeah, Don, we kind of, I've known about you for a long time, but we met face to face for the first time in Orlando a few weeks ago, and I feel quite fortunate that our mutual friend Mike Peel was kind of there to make the connection for us. But basically tell me about your journey into the unmanned space or the uncrewed space, and what things that you're passionate about and what things you're working on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, absolutely. I love your saying, by the way, just evangelizing about the industry, because I feel like that's also what I do. So we have that in common. But to answer your question, Randall, my journey with drones really started back in the United States Air Force. I was an active duty judge advocate or military lawyer. Did that for almost 25 years. But it was really kind of towards the tail end of my career, when I was more senior, that I got into uncrewed aircraft law and policy. And in fact, I created the DoD's I call it first, but it was the first known domestic policy for using UAS in the national airspace. There are policies out there, just nobody knew about them. That's a whole nother story over a beer someday. But yeah, so that's kind of started my journey, and it really just sparked a passion in me because it was so interesting. This was about 2012. If you recall, Randall, at that time in our country, there was just like this explosion of state drone laws that happened. Like prohibited from, it was mostly geared towards law enforcement, prohibiting them from using drones to gather evidence or collect information, and so there was just so much to kind of sink my teeth into, even on the military side, because one thing that I evangelize about is the fact that the military and civilian or commercial sectors are really symbiotic. One doesn't exist without the other. And so what happens at the state level, out there could absolutely impact military bases that are in the United States. So anyway, that's a long way of saying that. That started my journey. That sparked my passion. I just started researching, just reading everything I could get my hands on, started writing prolifically, mostly scholarly journals at the time. And then, kind of all culminated in October of 2019. I had already retired from active duty. At this point, I was working as a civilian federal attorney for the Air Force General Counsel's office, as a business matters attorney for the Air Force Academy. And in October of 2019, Women in Drones actually recognized me as a woman to watch in UAS that year. And that, and meeting Mike Peel, you mentioned Mike, my hero. He ran Interdrone. That program was affiliated very deeply with Interdrone at the time. It just sparked a whole host of conversations, and really between Mike and Sharon Rossmark, the CEO of Women in Drones, and then I met Richard Fisher, the publisher for Inside Unmanned Systems magazine. All of these things coalesced very quickly that year to inspire me to create my company at P3 Tech Consulting. And so, that's the long way of kind of my journey and how I got started. And we can talk more about kind of what it's evolved into now that I'm doing it full time. But that was really the origin story.
Yeah, so I think what it's evolved into is extremely interesting, and I think that for myself, being primarily on the manufacturer side, like, policy mattered, but policy wasn't really like at the forefront it wasn't keeping me from doing anything that I needed to do. Of course, there's going to be greater proliferation and a greater, democratization of this technology once policy kind of catches up to where we're at. But on a day-to-day basis, are you working with companies who have policy concerns, or are you working with lawmakers and trying to kind of lobby them, so to speak, in how they're making decisions that impact this technology?
That's a great question, Randall. So in my company, I'm actually, first of all, I'm not practicing law, even though I am still a licensed attorney. Policy, regulation, legal aspect of what I do primarily revolves around education. So I'm an adjunct professor at Colorado State University at Pueblo. I'm also an adjunct at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University Worldwide Campus for a graduate course in uncrewed systems law and policy right now. And all my writings and everything I do, my podcast and everything else, it all revolves around education. I am affiliated with a number of organizations, like not-for-profits, that do have an active lobbying role. For example, the Urban Low Altitude Transport Association, Ray Adams and Ron Leach there from Jersey. I was one of their first board members, and that's something they're actively doing. And we as an organization are trying to move the tri-state area forward. So those guys are actually going to be on my podcast tomorrow. I'm sure we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
So to your question directly, have companies like hired me as a consultant to directly lobby for them? The answer is no. But I'm doing that work. Actually, I take it back. I can't get into details, but one company actually did. As a particular piece of legislation was percolating along, they threw in with another company to hire me to help write their issue paper that they put forward as part of a legislative proposal. So it's not a large part of what I do, but I certainly could do it. I love to do it. But most of that practice is kind of through these nonprofits that I'm affiliated with, and I have to be very careful, of course, being a licensed attorney, not to cross that line into practicing law,
Right.
because I'm just not doing that in my business.
Right. So the amount of, I mean, you create content and it's educational content, and I mean, maybe I'm starting to understand the shape of it, where you have companies that have interest in either educating about their particular concern with the way that policy is moving, and you want to educate either the masses or educate specific groups that to help move these policies forward in a way that's kind of behooves your client. That's why you create so much content. That's why you've created your platforms, or is there something else that just like was a burning desire inside of you to create content?
Well, I think the word you used earlier is kind of how it evolved, and it really evolved into this practice of working with companies to help elevate what they're doing, kind of from a branding standpoint, or even kind of content marketing. But that's not really. So what I'm passionate about is what you're passionate about, Randall, which is elevating the industry, and that takes all forms. And that frankly is why, like, I've had companies, for-profit companies, ask me to be on their boards. I've said no, because I don't want to be attached to any one company because I want to kind of be considered more like Switzerland. I'm out there, I'm talking about all the companies. I don't consider it a conflict to talk about, for example, UAvionics and Sage Tech Avionics, right? They're both doing, IFF, right? Identify friend or foe transponders for the military. But I'd be happy to work with either, So they bring different things to the table. And to me, it's all about the whole ecosystem and getting that information out so people have an awareness of, what's out there from not only a technology standpoint, but of course services and other things, equipment, like, what you just said about OEMs.
Yeah, and I think that there's something interesting about agnosticism in like the drone industry, where a lot of technologies, let's say software developers, they want to be drone agnostic. So they're like, we work with everyone. And I feel like as a human being, like I've tried to stay in that realm. And I was lucky enough for my 5 years at FLIR where there wasn't really another thermal manufacturer that was in play. So I was able to kind of communicate and touch all sorts of different points of the industry. But as a human being being agnostic, I still feel that way, regardless of what brand I'm, wearing on my chest or what things I have to represent publicly, that there's something about this platform, Unmanned Underground, which is just me. It's just like it leads back to no business, and it allows me to elevate people. It allows me to elevate brands. It allows the discussion to be had about what's going on in the minds of people, individuals within the industry, regardless of the brands that they represent.
Yeah, absolutely. And you might see like me talking about a specific company. Well, I do have strategic partners, and those are usually the ones that tend to hire me more. So of course I'm going to, we're going to elevate each other. We're going to talk more about, what each other is doing, because we support each other. But, as LinkedIn says, right, open for business, like open for jobs, opportunities.
Right.
I'm always open to have discussions with other companies as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that sometimes the industry, you only can interact with it in certain ways and in certain places. For instance, if you purchase technology, then you are interacting with the hardware. Or if you're the one that, day to day, or you're out in the field flying technology, it's the way that you make your money. But it's like trade shows, especially over the last 2 years, were really difficult, and we kind of lost touch with a lot of people, and we weren't able to see the progress that we're making as an industry. So going back to Exponential, it was my first time back for 2 years. I didn't go to the one kind of hybrid one in Atlanta. Did you feel like we've made progress over those 2 years of kind of silence, or do you feel like we're really just kind of revving the engines back up in the industry?
I absolutely feel like we've made progress for a whole host of reasons. First of all, I want to kind of tie it back to your agnostic comment, because I think gone are the days of one conference company kind of pitting people against other people, or, hey, we're competition with this other conference. What I saw at AVSI for the first time this year were literally other conference companies having a booth and like engaging in part of that process. Like, so everybody, kind of is collaborating and working together. I feel like that is progress, so because there, I mean, Randall, you probably know this. There was a time, right, where if you were on one board, like then you were persona non grata to another group.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like that is the case at all anymore, that is huge, because until we all start work, as they say in the Navy, the tide can raises all ships.
Yeah.
And that's the approach we need to take to move this industry forward. And I'm loving the fact that we saw that at AUVSI, and I'm assuming we're going to see this at Energy Drone Robotics Coalition Summit, coming up here in June, and then of course at Commercial UAV and all the other ones, down the line. So your question about progress, look, during COVID, if it showed us anything, and when I say us, usually it's like this FUBU, right? For us, by us. Like we're so good as an industry talking about ourselves, to ourselves. The first time I started seeing really good, positive drones for good stories out in the mainstream media. Why? Because drones are, they prove to be the perfect social distancer. They're out there, like Drone Up as an example was delivering the COVID at-home test kits for Walmart. Just saw news today that they now have a huge addition to their delivery with Walmart. We saw Zipline delivering medicine out in Africa, and now you're doing this in the. So all of these stories started to percolate for the first time outside of our little bubble, and good stories, positive stories, and I feel like that is tremendous progress. I also feel that on the regulatory standards, legal side, we saw progress as well, right? So good, bad, or indifferent. The remote ID rule was published in 2021. Operations over people at night, over moving vehicles. The Beyond Visual Line of Sight Aviation Rulemaking Committee, just filed their report this year, and we'll see what happens with that. In Europe, doing a ton of things with U-Space and the Gulf of Finland trials, 2.0, they're already at 2.0. Some new things coming out. And even on, let's get out of the small drone, kind of mindset for a second. Advanced air mobility, we saw some legislation come across, where Congress is saying, hey, put together a group and start talking about this. And at the state level, the money that's flowing out there, the SPACs that are happening in advanced air mobility with eVTOL aircraft, electric vertical takeoff landing, and of course, you can't talk about progress without giving the military huge props. I mean, when you look at the Defense Innovation Unit and the Blue UAS program, we could talk about that all day long. Some love it, some hate it. People love it or on the list.
Right.
But AFWorks, AFWorks doing all of this great stuff with companies like Joby and, it's just a whole host of companies, and that's the gateway to commercial and civil certification, military cert. And we saw this happening. So, I mean, I can talk all day long, but, if I think of like top three, those were kind of the top three tranches, I'd say, where we're seeing huge amounts of progress.
So I have two thoughts. First, I just wanted to say that you mentioned the, drone trade shows kind of collaborating in a way, or just not really, kind of seeing it more as like a collaboratorship, where they're kind of doing
that's a good word.
Both. And I feel like the drone industry is too small to have people plucking, biting each other like horses do, or plucking each other's feathers. I don't know good animal references, but it's like I feel like when I was at DJI years ago, there was like a certain arrogance that you could have being there, where you were kind of just like, who are all these small players? And I remember going to this event with a guy from 3DR was there, just like a pilot. And he was like, oh, I can't talk to the enemy. And I was like, I'm not the enemy. Like, what are you talking about? I'm just the guy that's interested in this all working and us growing this industry together. And this like fly off thing, the 3DR drone crashes into a tree, and it's like kind of, good riddance-y feeling from my perspective. But at the same time, I also remember going to Farm Progress that same year and like hanging out with the Autel people at the time. And that's how this industry should work. And I feel like there's some new kids on the block in the industry from the manufacturer side that kind of have this new found like arrogance, and I feel like that's just stifling our ability to grow. And I feel like the Sino China phobia that exists within the country also creates like this weird conundrum of, if you pull too many people away from DJI too soon, then how does everyone survive? Because so many businesses are built on the volume that DJI can manufacture and the price points that they have. So I think that it's really important to talk about collaboration. Since I joined Enterprise UAS, one of my good friends that are in like the value added reseller space said, "Oh, it looks like we're competitors now." I'm like, no, like we kind of always have been working together, and we always will be working together, even if someone profits more than others. So,
well, on that point, I work with clients all the time, and I put them on other people's podcasts. I'm not just like pitching, hey, you need to be on the Dawn of Drones, because look, if a company wants to get their brand out there, they want to be known and have that recognition, you want to be as many places as possible. And the beautiful thing is I have an incredible network of wonderful friends and colleagues, whether it's Bronwyn Morgan with their Zeocast, right? Jason Sansucci, Do You Know Drones? I mean, the list goes on and on, where we're constantly kind of sharing amongst each other and collaborating. And I wouldn't even call it, what was the word you made up, which I love?
Co-op petition, I think.
Collab.
Co-op.
I'll have to rewind it later. And it was a good word.
Yeah.
You made it up, like ginormous. It's going to be in the dictionary soon, my friend. Yeah. But I think you had a second point you wanted to make.
Yeah, the other thing is that we're talking about all the policy advancements that have been made over the last 2 years. And I think that there's policy advancements that are made all the time. I don't know about them. Why? Because I don't educate myself about them. So if you were to advise someone that's, the guy out in the field that just wants to know when they're enabled to do something, or what pathway they would have to take to be enabled, or to just know about the changes that are happening, what are resources that you suggest for people to stay really current with that information, other than, and we could talk about your content, your podcasts and stuff like that, but what sources are readily at hand for that sort of thing?
Well, it would be self-serving to say follow me, because that's what I do, right?
Yeah.
This is all I do all day long, and I'm pushing out 2 to 3 posts a day, and I have a Patreon that has a exclusive blog there. But I think there's a lot of different news and media outlets that are pushing out some great content. Obviously my partner, so again, I don't mean to sound self-serving, but Mary McNabb at Drone Life does a good job of keeping up to date. You get that daily blast in your email. If you're on the national security net, side, Breaking Defense is a great one. Military Embedded Systems, I write for them. Inside Unmanned Systems magazine, not only do they have a magazine online presence, they have a newsletter. So there's probably about 15, 20 newsletters I could say you should be subscribing to. And, it's going to spam your inbox, but it's a real quick, like 5-minute over coffee scan to realize, is there anything of interest for me here? Oh, look, there's this one. Mm-hmm. Or I'm aware of this company. I had no idea they just landed this big deal. So, for the policy, for kind of the industry goings on, I feel like all of these different magazines, UAS Vision is another one, by the way. They're out of the UK, and, I subscribe to all of these, and I also contribute to all of these. For a reason, because they really have great content.
Mm-hmm. So if you could give us a snapshot of where BVLOS is today and where you think that it's going to be in the near future.
Well, where it is today, it's where it's been for a while. I think we've seen maybe some additional exemptions, waivers granted. But where it is today, it's still an exception, if you will, to the general rule of Part 107, which requires visual line of sight operations. So, now with the companies like Iris Automation's Detect and Avoid system, and now they've got a ground-based surveillance system, and drone-in-a-box solutions with autonomous systems that have been kind of proven through the Beyond and before that, the IPP, right, the Integration Pilot Program, really coming to kind of fruition. You're seeing these more frequently granted. It's not like the days where, oh, look, Skydio just got the first Beyond Visual Line of Sight waiver to do statewide, bridge inspections in North Carolina. Mm-hmm. Now it's just like a little bit more routine because people like Skydio, companies like Skydio and others have kind of, in a way, as first what's the word I'm looking for, kind of first in, have plowed the path for other people kind of to make it a little bit easier. And even if they're not using their drones, if they can show that same or similar safety case, you're getting approved, right?
Right.
Where is it going to be? That's a great question, Randall, because that beyond visual line of sight BVLOS Aviation Rulemaking Committee report, 400 pages plus, had a lot of stuff in there. I wrote a pretty good synopsis for Inside Unmanned Systems magazine on that, but again, that's scratching the surface. Those are all recommendations. So I have not heard the FAA say we're going to take this recommendation, we're going to ditch this recommendation, or even rumors of that. So I don't know when they're going to act, what they're going to do, but we are falling behind. And here's the key thing: non-visual line of sight in part is tied to the remote ID rule, because it was kind of structured that way. Same thing with operations over people for categories 2 and 3 operations, tied to remote ID rule. What's happening with remote ID? Great question, because we've got the lawsuit, race day quads versus FAA. Oral arguments were heard in December. We all thought, everybody thought by now, we are almost in June. I'm thinking the court is going to go into recess soon. Cases were heard after this, well after this, and opinions have already been issued on those cases. Where are we on this? I don't know, because things are hanging in the balance. For OEMs, right, the deadline is this September 2022. Okay, we're only a couple months out, and it's just so what is this even meaning? What do we go ahead and start manufacturing remote ID that might not even be legally compliant and spend a bunch of money on that? That's because you said earlier, Randall, as an OEM, this policy stuff doesn't necessarily affect us. Well, this one will, and this is law. This could be law depending on how the court comes down, because they raise constitutional issues. So I don't know that it was necessarily about the technology from an OEM standpoint. In other words, the broadcast. It was more about how, as a matter of policy, it would be implemented, especially vis-a-vis law enforcement and the ability to persistently track people in their backyards without a warrant. So that's a big one, and that is out there. So it's a really long answer to your short question about beyond visual line of sight, but because remote ID has been kind of put on this pedestal as a building block to BVLOS, to ops over people, categories 2 and 3, to so many other things, it's now what? And Europe's moved out, right?
Yeah, so in a perfect world, we would be able to achieve the things that are enabled by BVLOS approvals, right? We would be able to do long duration missions, long linear missions for inspection work. We'd be able to continue following an escapee from a prison and not, have to turn around because you can no longer see the airframe. There's a lot of instances in which the lack of a BVLOS understanding keeps us from achieving what we can achieve with this technology.
Absolutely.
So what, do you feel like that is on the horizon of being addressed because it is so important for the enabling what this technology can do? Or do you believe that from the FAA's perspective, it's just too risky to create concrete rules for BVLOS? Uh-oh. Lost you on sound, Don. I don't know why. There we go.
Looks good.
Now you're good.
Okay.
Yeah, that was
I
weird.
was going to say, that was part of the recommendations, Randall, was to create a new Part 108 to address this. And is the FAA going to go there or not? I don't know what they're going to do.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. I also feel like while technology has advanced, some of the things that you still need. Look, we're still working through 5G, Randall. We just had this giant kerfuffle. That's right. That's also a technical word.
Right.
Back in December or January, when Verizon, I think it was T-Mobile, were going to launch the 5G rollout, and the aviation community, FAA, came forward and said, "We'll hold one because this is interfering with some of our how did they call it? Life critical avionics." And it's just like, whoa, stop the press right there. So, this idea of 5G, how does this work? Connectivity solutions, command and control, one to many. The military's been doing this for years, but at very, very high elevations, very expensive, operations centers. And there are companies just now popping up that say, hey, we've got a C2 solution for the commercial sector, but they're just literally now popping up. So it's not just the policy, Randall. Like, while the technology has come a long way, there's still, I think, pieces and parts that need to really gel to make this work on a regular basis.
Right. So we talked a bit about the importance of education and sitting listening to you, I'm learning so much stuff that I know very, very little about. But you're launching some new podcasts or some new ways new platforms, I guess is what I would say. So do you want to talk a little bit about what those platforms are, where you can be found, what dates and times that you do these things and all of that?
Yeah, thank you. I'll do a quick around the world, and I'll start with the platform we already have. So the Dawn of Drones is affiliated with Drone Life. They help us present that, me and Mike Peel, my producer, every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Mountain Time on Drone Life TV. It streams a lot of places, but check that out. Every month we have a theme, and this coming month in June, it's Emerging Industry Leaders. It's going to be sponsored by the Sonoran Desert Institute. So if you haven't heard of them and you want to know about drone education, you might want to dial in next Wednesday when I have John Miner, the president and dean of that organization, on the podcast. Just kicked off my inaugural Law Tech Connect workshop with AEVSI Exponential in Orlando. That was awesome. It was 8 hours of content. We did get continuing legal education credits for the lawyers, but I'll tell you, Randall, my vision was achieved. I know it sounds corny, but my goal, why I created my company in large part, was to have lawyers and engineers and drone pilots and policymakers, OEMs, all in the same room having very important conversations, and not having segmented groups in a back room making policies and they don't know anything about the other groups. Mm-hmm. And we achieved that. We had about 50% lawyers, 50% everybody else, including students and academia. So it was really awesome. By the way, Denver 2023, we're going again. So stay tuned. Really excited about that. 2 new podcasts. So with Mike, we're launching our own brand and platforms. It's kind of under the moniker of Full Crew. So like, join our crew. Full Crew is going to be a newscast. It's going to be every Monday, 9 a.m. Mountain Time. We've got Twitter, we've got YouTube, we got all places. It's going to stream across Mike's platforms, my platform. So like I said, follow me on LinkedIn at a minimum, if not across Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all of them. And when I say follow me on Facebook, follow P3 Tech Consulting. I
Not the personal.
Yeah, because people throw me out a personal invite. I'm like, no, this is dog and kid pictures and like family members only. So that would be a deny. So I don't want people to think rude, but that's why, you have to build your business one under your personal one. Okay, so Full Crew, that's what that's going to look like. It's going to be me, Mike, and then an industry leader and someone from this bucket. Mm-hmm. Academia, not-for-profit, government, and media. So 2 people plus us, grabbing about three or so articles from the headlines and yammering about it every Monday, giving you the latest news in technology, not just drones. Okay. Mm-hmm. Every other Tuesday, let's say, we're going to do Full Tilt, TILT. It's an acronym. Tech Industry Leadership Talks. Inspiration for this, Randall, was like at the end of my Dawn of Drones, after we dial off to the public, do a little segment that I put on my Patreon exclusive for my members there. And it's all about life and leadership. So I've been asking everybody the same 3 questions. They are, who's your hero and why? What's your favorite book? And what is one leadership tip you learned along the way you'd like to pass along to others? And we got such incredible information from people. It was so inspirational. We were like, we need to have our own podcast just on this. And so that's what this leadership, it's literally about leadership, So I'm so excited for this. We already have our first guest lined up. So drum roll, right? Yeah, you're hearing it first here. Randall gets the scoop.
I get the scoop.
Our very first guest will be on Full Crew. We are going to have, gosh, give me
Oh
one second.
no! Oh no, Don! That was supposed to be in the holster, ready to
No,
go.
it was supposed to be seamless, and I screwed up because I'm sorry. I've been working all morning like you, Randall.
Yeah,
and,
of course.
Okay. Oh my gosh, how could I forget? This is crazy. Okay, Full Crew, Monday, June 6th, 9 a.m. Mountain Time. Join us, me and Mike, with Romeo Dersher from Alterion. You mentioned Romeo. You mentioned Alterion.
Yep.
And Miriam McNabb from Drone Life. It's going to be spectacular.
Yeah.
Okay, so then, drum roll again, the next day, our very first Full Tilt, 9 a.m. on Tuesday, June 7th, is going to be with my mentor and personal hero, Major General United States Air Force retired James Poss.
Wow.
His theme and what he's going to be talking about is leading in highly complex technical environments. If anybody can talk about that, it's a 2-star general who was the number 2 intel guy in the Air Force before he retired. So those are some of our first guests, and we'll be pushing out every week, kind of who's next week's guests are. But those are our new ones, and we have a website, we have a Twitter, we have YouTube, so follow us there. Yeah, so that's it. And my website is going under a rebranding. I should have it out there in about 2 weeks. All of my full audio library, full video library, all of it will be out there for free, and really hope people will check it out, because I'm really excited to launch that.
Definitely. So I posted your LinkedIn in the chat. I mean, you're not hard to find, especially if you're attached to the industry. But are there any other links you want me to put in here now? Or
boy, Rand, I should have thought of that ahead of time.
No, it's okay. I mean, you said that you could pretty much find all the content that you create through LinkedIn or Twitter or etc. Right? So
sure. Yeah.
We could just assume that they'll find you, and I think that anyone that was blessed and privileged to listen to you and to hear the kind of insights that you have and the things that you're passionate about and have been working on over the past 30 minutes, I think that we're lucky to have someone like you in the industry, someone that focuses and really believes in the education and evangelism of this technology. There has to be people that are not just behind the desk. And I can tell you, for this thing that I do every Tuesday, and it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of stress, and it's a lot of and for me, it's just kind of like doing something I'm passionate about. So I really commend you on all the work that you put into the industry, and just want to tell you, appreciation from the bottom of my heart, not only for someone in the industry that benefits from it, but also someone that has a daughter that sees, that they can see more women in technical places and leaders in the industry.
Thank you, Randall. And could I say two more
Please.
things?
Yes.
One is in relation to you. Okay. The first one is, you mentioned where can people learn about drone law and policy, and I did just put out a book with Unmanned Safety Institute. So if you go to Unmanned Safety Institute and you look up their courses and whatnot, it's called Unmanned Aircraft Systems Legal and Business Considerations, a Modern Primer for the Industry. So that is now available, and it's also for the academics out there. There's affiliated coursework. So I wanted to say that first. The second thing I want to say, can I talk about what we might do every month?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay.
Sure.
All right. So Mike and I have been talking with Randall about rolling up our Full Crew kind of clips, some of the highlights, and doing a little segment every month on Unmanned Underground, kind of called the Monthly Crew Roundup. And so making that content available to all of you, just like as a quick, highlight reel, if you will, of here's some of the highlights from the last month. So we hope to do that starting in June, I guess. Yeah. End of June.
And I think that that's one of the beautiful things about collaboration, is that we sometimes have relationships or contacts in different parts of this industry that we can, bring all together. And I really value what you've done, what Mike has done, and to be able to highlight what you're doing with my little quarter of the world is my pleasure. I'm looking forward to seeing how that comes together.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Randall. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. Thanks, everybody out there.
Of course, Don. We'll talk again soon. And thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
Bye. guys, that was Dawn Zoldi. She is incredible, not only super smart, but motivated by the right things within this industry. And I think that is so rare to find people that, well, actually, no, I won't say it's rare. I will say that most people that I have interacted with on Unmanned Underground, and the people that I see at shows, and people want to do the right things. They want to be a part of something that really tells the story of what we're doing with unmanned platforms. But there's just some people that take it to the next level, and I think Dawn is one of those people. So I am grateful to have her on, and I'm grateful for the people that have come into chat that are first-time chatters. Unmanned Uncut, we got Cam7. I saw some other folks. I saw Geeks Vana is back in here. I appreciate you guys being here. Again, the short hiatus that I was on, I kept getting sick, and then I was out of town, and then just didn't know how to really get things going again. So I hope to be more consistent, but I genuinely appreciate you guys being here, because it makes it so that I know that there are people that want this sort of content, that are looking for more conversations within the industry, and also to broaden their own personal network. So I appreciate you guys for being here. Unmanned Uncut, you asked about Clubhouse. I know that Dawn does do something on Clubhouse as well, and I don't know exactly the details on that, but she's everywhere doing every single thing. So you might need to reach out to her and ask her more information about that. We have a double dip of Troy's coming up. We have Troy Messler from Skyfront, and then later on we have Troy Nakamp from Quad Standard Labs. And I think that these conversations are going to be equally as interesting as the conversation with Dawn. I know that when people get in this industry and have passion and have staying power, you spend a little bit of time in here, you start seeing things that, that the people that are using the technology on a day-to-day basis don't necessarily see what's happening behind the scenes. So I think it's always good to have people that have started their own businesses, created or manufacturing their own airframes, that they can speak to the industry. So we'll bring them on in just a bit. Again, I want to just say thank you for everyone that is here and the people that are chatting. I think that as we ramp back up, that we will be able to see this community grow. Cam7, thanks for the follow as well. It'd be interesting if you're in here, Cam7 still, if you did you come in from LinkedIn, from a LinkedIn post, or did you come in on your own? How did you end up in here? That would be interesting to me to know. But I don't know if you're still here. And I saw that Troy Messler just came in, and then he jumped off with his video. So when he's back in, we'll hop over there and we'll get another conversation going. Oh, he is there. Okay, so I'm gonna bring in Troy Messler now, and we'll have that chat. But Cam, if you from LinkedIn, awesome. Well, thanks for being here, brother. Or assuming that you're brother. Anyways, Troy Messler. Troy, what's up, man? Your mic is not on. I don't have sound from you. Okay. Let me see if you... Sorry, guys. You might need to change your input device. He looks like Troy jumped off and he'll be jumping back in. So I apologize for the technical difficulties. Sometimes we don't check these things as thoroughly as we should before we go on. Just so you know, I don't hear you now, Troy. It looks like there's a little symbol that says no headset or something like that.
Oh, now.
There we go. Yeah, can hear you now.
Awesome. Just let me turn my video.
Yeah, my man. Okay.
Yeah.
That's great.
It's good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you as well, man. And I know that we were supposed to do this before, just bad timing on the first round. So I'm glad that we were able to reboot it back up and get you in here. But yeah, how's everything going before we get into some questions?
Everything is going great.
Good,
it's
man.
A busy Tuesday morning.
So you guys are based in Bay Area, California, right?
Yeah, we're in Redwood City, California.
Redwood City.
We used
Perfect.
to be based in Menlo Park.
Okay, cool. And you've been doing this stuff since what, 2014, I think, is what I remember?
2014 is when the company was formed, but improper since 2016. That's when we
Okay.
raised our seed round of capital.
So kind of walk me through the foundation of the company and like what you were trying to achieve back then at the beginnings, and how that's kind of evolved and changed into what Skyfront is today.
Yeah. So, uh, I had bought well, first let me just take a step back and talk about my background.
Yeah.
So I did my PhD in physics, and the whole point of me going and getting a PhD was I wanted to start a company at some point and like figure out some technology and then go commercialize it. And after graduating, I worked for a company in New York City, in kind of a very unrelated field. I learned a lot there about running an early stage company. I didn't run it, but I learned, I observed the founders and what they were doing.
Right.
Afterward, I was looking for things to do, I bought a DJI Phantom. I think it was like a Phantom 1 or a Phantom 2, and the thing flew for 15 minutes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is at a time where people were really thinking about using drones for everything, right? Deliveries, ISR, whatever you could possibly imagine. But the idea was like, well, hey, if this thing can only fly for 20 minutes, there's no way you're going to be able to scale this business.
Right.
And that was the genesis of Skyfront. And so I used my my physics background and researched different propulsion technologies, from fuel cells to exotic battery technologies like lithium, sulfur. And we always kept coming back to hybrid electric. So that is, it's a gas powered engine that generates electricity, and then distributes that to the motors and propellers. And just kept on coming back that for a number of different reasons. You get the high energy density of gasoline. It can operate in extreme temperatures, both cold and hot. It's widely available, so there's you can go to like any country and you could find gasoline.
Mm-hmm.
And so we did a back of the envelope calculation, and we were like, hey, this thing could fly for multiple hours. I think our first calculation was actually that it could fly for 12 hours. I'm like, wow, that's crazy. So we circulated this idea with a bunch of industry experts, and the CEO of former drone companies. The feedback was overwhelmingly negative. There's just no way that you're going to be able to do this. If it would have already been done. And I'm like, well, perfect, because we believe something that other people don't believe. So let's go and let's do that.
Right.
That's the opportunity. So yeah, that was the genesis of the company, and it's basically, what we're trying to do and achieve here is to replace crewed helicopters. In particular, we want to, and the reason why we want to do that is because they're super expensive, and they're dangerous too. So if you have to fly low, you have to clip power lines, hit trees. It happens all the time. People die from this. And so we wanted to create something that was safer and more cost effective by a factor of 100. And that's been Skyfront's sole mission from the day of inception. So we really haven't changed too much.
Because there were a lot of people you were saying that didn't really believe that a hybrid gas electric unmanned platform was going to work, is what you said. How did you kind of push through those doubters, people that maybe you respected or people that maybe had seen some things to continue down that path, to continue down that journey? Because I find outside influences to be extremely difficult. I'm not meant to be like an NBA athlete, which gets heckled all the time and told that I'm shit and I just keep going. I let that stuff get to me. So kind of talk about like your conviction in what you were building, and where that conviction kind of led to an entire company being built from it.
Yeah, I mean, the answer is really simple. It's just math and double checking your math and physics and just believing in that. We were trained scientists, and like it was just kind of obvious. I think yeah, it was very upsetting, like hearing that from people. But at the same time, when you think about it, like that is the opportunity, doing something that people don't necessarily believe in at the time, but will believe on later on once they see the proof.
Yeah, so tell
So,
me about like the educational process of getting people that are used to having, DJI platforms in their hands. They have a LiPo battery, they shove it in, it dies at some point, they go and charge it again, or they put in another one. This is a bit of a different, like, the airframes that you build. You have a quadcopter and a hexcopter, right?
we have an octocopter,
Octocopter.
and we have a
My bad.
quadcopter.
My bad. Quadcopter and
No,
octocopter.
all good.
And they look like something familiar, but the way that they're powered is not. I mean, it's familiar in other realms, but not necessarily for unmanned platforms. So what are the challenges that you have in educating people that this is not only safe, but also, the best option for doing these long duration, long endurance missions?
Well, I think a lot of the education kind of happened naturally, as the market evolved. Um, you had large teams of drone pilots going out there in the middle of the field, hauling batteries around, trying to transport them on airliners, transporting them into different countries. And once people ran the experiment a number of times, um, it became very clear that it wasn't super economical for a lot of different jobs. For many jobs, it makes a ton of sense. If you want to, photograph some real estate, like you put your battery powered drone up. If you want to cover large acreages, right, like large areas of land that a crewed helicopter would typically do, well, then you're going to need helicopter like endurance and helicopter like payload capacity. And so, as the market has evolved and, people just come to us, we really haven't had to do a lot of education about that. Obviously, we do a lot of evangelizing off of LinkedIn and all that, and we tell people about the benefits of what we do.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's been that. In regards to safety, it I think people have a misconception maybe about gasoline and what that it is actually the thing that causes the fire. It propels the fire, right? It's a propellant. It doesn't actually start it. And what typically starts it is the battery. So we've never had a single fire on our drone before.
Oh wow.
So in terms of safety, I would say it's no less safe than a battery powered aircraft.
So there's a few questions that have come in from chat, and I'm glad to see that they're really interested in this concept. Even though you can imagine having a hybrid gasoline involved in the loop airframe, that it's not the most common thing. So there's questions like how much fuel does it hold, and what kind of flight time do you get? That's like a clear one. But also, like, does the engine itself have a lot of vibration because it's using gas? Does it have a noise because it's using gas? Like, kind of walk us through what the flight experience is like with this Skyfront airframe.
Yeah, so our goal from day one has been to maintain all the great points of an electric powered aircraft as much as possible, right? The simplicity of the electric motors, the ESCs, all that stuff is the same. The thing that's different, obviously, is the hybrid propulsion system, which is an engine. It's a single cylinder, 2-stroke engine. And this thing, it does vibrate, right? And if you don't dampen it, it's going to propagate to the rest of your airframe. It's going to mess with your flight controller, and it's going to mess with the data that you're collecting from your cameras. So what we did is we completely vibration isolated it. And I kind of tell this. I say this to people who come here and they train. When we can turn off the engine in the middle of the flight, and we'll record the vibrations for the duration of that flight, so we can see what the vibration levels are before and after, and they're pretty much identical. And the majority of vibrations actually come from the propellers, and that's because we've dampened the engines. In terms of the noise, yes, it generates noise. We've been told that we're the quietest hybrid on the market.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're going to be operating over a kindergarten, I wouldn't recommend it. But if you're out doing power line surveys where no one's around, like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, compare it to a helicopter. That's like the thing that I always bring people back to is like, how
Right.
loud is a helicopter?
So there's also a question about maintenance and documentation of the maintenance because it is a different kind of engine. Is there more that needs to be done on that side?
Yes. So we do have engine maintenance that needs to be performed, and we've gotten it down. We identified that early on as a potential snag in wide scale adoption of our aircraft, and so we worked really hard on that, and we've actually gotten the maintenance down to someone who's trained that can perform it within 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes. And basically, it's basically just swapping commodity parts. That's it. And the maintenance costs are actually really low too. That's kind of one of the things that sets us apart because we own the power generation part. We can actually price everything really low. There's no company in the middle between us and the customer.
So you mentioned price. Is your pricing for these airframes published, or is it kind of like a workaround? Obviously, it depends on the payload, but can you give us a ballpark of what you're charging for an airframe?
Yeah. So our base price, so that's those standard radios go out that go up to 10 kilometers. That is $46,800.
Okay. Okay,
that's where it starts.
So it is like, I mean, it's a step up from even like most commercial airframes, but I mean, obviously there's a unique value proposition that's being the story that's being told, and what you can do is, you know, you're replacing a helicopter, like you said, which do you quote? I'm sure that you quote it all the time, like the cost of operating a helicopter per hour. Is that something that's like in your repertoire?
Oh yeah, it's greater than $1,000 an hour. You know, our operating cost is in the $30.
Yeah. So I mean, it all makes sense, and it's something that I was a little bit, I won't say taken aback, but I went to your website in preparation for this, just kind of like school myself up, and you focus a lot on security and surveillance, search and rescue, and those sorts of missions. But then your payloads obviously tell a much broader story with multispectral and with LiDAR and things like that. So do you feel, is this a widening of Skyfront? Is Skyfront, as it evolves, becoming more suitable or finding other industries that it wants to be used in? Or is it narrowing where it's like really security and surveillance is who's getting the most benefit out of the technology right now?
I think, certainly, the platform is very general, right? There's a lot of different applications that need long endurance. We don't plan on any ways in restricting that or like narrowing and being like, hey, like we're not gonna tackle those applications because it's not core to what we do. Like we do it all. Like there's a lot of different applications. We do magnetometry, where there's very low altitude, sub 10 meter altitude magnetic surveys, LiDAR surveys, inspections, power line inspections, right of way surveys, and then on the military side, we do ISR.
Right.
So.
Right.
So it's a great ISR platform because it just hovers there. There's a lot of benefits to using that versus like a traditional fixed wing aircraft for ISR.
Right. So as far as the payload integration work, is that something that's done in-house at Skyfront, or is that something that so you guys so if someone were to say they want a MicaSense payload on it, do they buy that MicaSense payload from you and it's already gimbalized and integrated, or are they buying that from MicaSense and then coming to you to kind of fix it to the bird? And is it all done as like a single purchase, or do you guys do any sort of like leasing programs of your airframes?
Oh, we do both. If they have the payload already, we'll take it and we'll integrate it.
Right.
So we wind up kind of charging the same amount, right? It doesn't matter if we're passing through the payload or not. The integration costs are the same.
Right.
So, yeah, we Super Bowl. We go in there. We'll figure out how to communicate with the device. We'll write a specification of what the customer wants. If they want it to trigger, if they want it to do terrain following, whatever it might be, and then we'll go and we'll figure out whether or not we can do it. And generally speaking, I would say 90% of the requests we can actually do. And then we'll go and we'll build the necessary circuit boards, the software, the firmware, whatever it might be, in order to go and accomplish those requirements.
And so if someone is approaching Skyfront for purchase of the airframe, are they doing all of the business transaction with Skyfront directly? Do you guys work through channels? Do you work through partners? Like what does the go-to-market strategy look like for Skyfront?
Yeah, we do. I mean, we have a number of different LiDAR partners as well who resell our vehicles. So we go through those. We have resellers in different industries, emerging industries that we're not super public about right now. As well, and but we also do direct to consumer, and we don't, if someone brings us a lead, we don't step in the way of them. Like if someone else brings us a lead and they have a prior agreement with us, we're like, okay, we're going to go through you. We'll let you resell it, and then we'll cut them a deal.
Yeah,
and that's how we typically work. We're just very flexible.
There was another question that came in, and I think that when you have a lot of questions, it's a really positive thing. But someone was wondering about the payloads that you have on offer. What do you find is the most popular? And I think that would help also, tell the story of what industries are really benefiting the most from this long duration, long endurance technology, as well as being able to accept some of the other things like noise and stuff like that.
Well, certainly LiDAR. Is probably one of the biggest ones on the commercial side, and then we do like exotic ISR cameras too. They're pretty popular, but they're traditionally on the military side where they're people can afford that technology because they're super expensive.
Right.
But yeah, LiDARs, and we have a whole bunch of them that we support. The ones that are on our website are not complete. We do Rock Robotic, Phoenix, Yellow Scan, Geodetics, Route Scene, Regal. All variations of the Regal, all type of integrations of the Regal sensor as well. So it's pretty wide ranging. And
what the LiDAR payloads are what missions are typically being done? What kind of LiDAR has been been symbiotic with the unmanned industry for a long time, but what are you actually seeing people going out and doing with LiDAR platforms?
This happened recently. A few companies that reached out to us to do carbon capture, or not carbon capture, excuse me. They're like figuring out how dense the jungles are to see how much carbon is being captured on a per acreage basis.
Okay.
That's one. Super exotic. I never thought that industry existed, but it's actually gaining a lot of steam. Another one is just construction. People building new stuff on land, and they need to figure out where things are. They need to survey the land, just what a traditional surveyor would do. Drone LiDAR does for them, just much quicker, and it can do a lot more land. And it's more cost effective as well.
So I don't know if this is going to be like understood in the way I'm saying it, but why is Skyfront like not more prevalent in the conversations of like things that are doing really important stuff in the unmanned industry? And that's hopefully you hear that out of complete respect. But it's like,
sure. That's why I'm on this podcast.
Is it a price thing? Is it that people just like can't fathom the cost of it, and so it's such a small niche thing that it's like your customers and they know you, but when it's like the broader drone space, you're not going to be in the same conversations as like DJI or consumer stuff? Is that the issue?
We don't. Yeah, like I think we serve different mission than DJI, right? Like DJI is great at photography and video, that short range. We'll never compete with them on that. We focus on long range, long endurance applications, and that's just a different customer base, and it's not as many individual customers as DJI would service, right? So that's one reason.
Yeah.
And it's just a different mission set, and a lot of our customers are very private too. They're not like blasting it on LinkedIn or whatever. So
yeah, and I think that it's also like I've seen this in a couple different places that I've been recently, or people I've talked to, where marketing in the drone industry is difficult because it can all just become like more noise about the same thing. Like everything kind of looks the same, and you don't really know those differentiators, and unless you bite into it a little bit, unless you like read beyond or look beyond the picture that you would see on LinkedIn, right? Like you see a LinkedIn post and you see the caption. If that doesn't pull you in, then it's just another drone. And I'm sure that yours and mine and most people in here, like if you go on LinkedIn, you see 90% drone stuff because that's who we're interacting with. So for a company like yours, roughly how many employees do you have at this point?
We're about 15 people.
15 people.
Yeah, something. Yeah.
And I would assume largely it's going to be the engineering side and then maybe like some go-to-market type stuff, right?
Yeah, I think maybe 14. I forget the last tally.
Yeah.
Sorry, what was that? There's
Well,
engineering and then there's assembly.
just the go-to-market stuff. I'm just wondering, like, is there a fundamental problem or issue in being able to market yourself without really doing like a Hail Mary and doing drone trade shows and stuff, which are quite expensive outside of just like the cost of booth space, but being able to send people and being able to build out a booth and all that stuff. Is that like, is that a conundrum in the place that you stand where it's like you have a technology that you just want to evangelize and you want to get out into the world, but there is this kind of cost equation of whether it's worth doing these marketing efforts, or what are the ways that you try to get into the user base?
Yeah, so we actually do a fair amount of trade shows. So we go to every AUVSI, Commercial UAV Expo. We just started doing them, I think, the last couple of years, though. We were kind of under the radar before then. But yeah, I mean, there's a huge cost to it. We find it actually there's a high ROI, and we do them. We continue to do them. We do a lot of LinkedIn. That's how we get the word out very quickly. So I have a huge following on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. I do all that too.
Yeah.
So we just find clever ways to do it as a small team.
For sure. And I think that that's kind of what I was getting at is I think that there are a lot of people that are tuned into the concept of unmanned platforms or robotics in general. But it's really, really hard to get into their living room. It's really hard to get into their minds. It's really hard to get into their workplace. It's really hard to get into their email inboxes. And so there's a lot of things that are being missed out on because there's like this inundation of, pretty pictures from drones, but like the other stuff doesn't really necessarily, like, if your marketing stuff isn't super good, they might hear 12 hours endurance but just be looking at a picture, right? And that's just a weird thing within our industry because drone technology is so visual, because of the data that's capturing is so visual that you almost miss like the spec sheet story that kind of happens behind the scene. And your story at Skyfront is largely a spec sheet story, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, generally speaking, like the people who find us are engineers or have engineering backgrounds. They've been super involved with the industry and they kind of know what they want, what they need from a business perspective. So a lot of our customers, they find us. We don't have to do a lot of outreach. And I think they just do a little bit of Google searching and they'll figure out what options are available out there. So yeah.
What's your take on hydrogen? Because I know there's companies like FlightWave and others. Doosan was doing hydrogen cell stuff. Like what? I'm sure that you've looked at other things. Do you know where you stack up with electric hybrid against?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I could talk your ear off about that.
Please do.
Hydrogen was one of the first things that we looked at. So I would say like we're not married to any technology, right? We just want the technology that's going to solve the problem, right? And the problem is endurance, and the problem is payload capacity. We took a look at that back in 2015, and I keep an eye on it every year. There's just a logistics issue, I think, and a cost issue. And if you think we're expensive at $46,000. Just imagine a hydrogen fuel cell drone with exotic, fuel cell on it. It's covered in gold. You have to lug around your own generation hydrogen generation equipment. So, you're into the hundreds of thousands of dollars pretty quickly. And then, and that's because it's just not available everywhere. Like with us, we just go to the pump and we fill it up and we're good to go. So we don't have to invest in infrastructure. I think if you're a consumer of a hydrogen powered drone, you're going to have to invest heavily in that. And you have to be willing to take it. Now, I think that there are some great applications for hydrogen. It's just they're more niche, right? And I think the one advantage that they have is they're quieter.
Yeah.
They're silent, some might say. So, but you have to weigh that with the disadvantages as well, and the cost and the availability, and then also just where they can operate. So, can they operate in cold temperatures? No. Can they operate in hot temperatures? No. And that when you look at the number of days that you can actually operate the thing, it's quite small. And so like we provide greater operational envelope. But yeah, there's a window and there's a time and a place for that, and I don't want to poo-poo it. Like there's application for it for sure. It's just, I think for wider scale adoption, I think hybrid electric is the way to go.
And for hybrid gasoline or hybrid electric airframes, are there regulations that extend beyond what we're typically dealing with? Is it only weight, and do you have an over 55-pound situation when you have a full tank with these airframes?
No.
Okay.
With a full tank, we're actually under 55 pounds. We're at 51 max takeoff weight.
Okay.
So we've optimized everything for weight, and we're pretty much the lightest you can get.
Got it.
Where the idea still makes sense.
Got it. And because because it is gasoline, are there like concerns, hazmat concerns or anything like that? We talked about the safety and that it doesn't like light on fire, but do you have to get a different waiver or different approvals to fly Skyfront airframe, or is it pretty much the same?
Not at all. Not at all. It's the same. And we've done some really high profile stuff. We've flown over submarines. We've flown over military, like, secret military installations. We've done a lot of stuff. Oil pipelines. So, they've been okay with it. We've done it multiple times in front of the FAA as well. So, there's no limitations to my knowledge.
I know that years ago, people would talk a lot about intrinsically safe airframes. And I'm just wondering if there's anything like on that side of building, especially on like motors, brushless motors, where you wouldn't have sparks and stuff like that. Is that anywhere in the discussion of what you guys do? Is that still like a thing that people are trying to get to?
Well, that's what we do. And we carry, I think a couple of weeks ago, we were carrying $500,000 sensor on our drone. All right. And, so stakes are very high, and we were doing that in front of like a lot of military people. And so we want to create the safest airframe possible, where you can protect your investment. You kind of think of it as insurance. And one of the ways that we do that is we actually have an 8-rotor system. So you can lose a propeller and it'll still fly. And like we've identified that as pretty much the most common failure among drones. ESCs blow, motors blow. It happens.
Right.
And so you want to use redundancy to be able to handle that in case it does.
And what do you do?
That and power,
Good.
right? So like if you run out of gas, like you want to be able to transition to battery power, and that's one of the things that we offer. Like the thing can fly for 4 to 5 minutes, and you can land it. It doesn't just come out of the sky as a traditional gas-powered drone would do, like a gas-powered helicopters. Those things have been around for a very long time, 30 years or so. They would just fall out of the sky. You can auto-rotate, but it's complicated. So yeah, what was your question about the motors?
I was just asking about intrinsically safe airframes, if that's like a thing that maybe because of the energy payload that you have on board, maybe you're more sensitive to sparks and things like that within the airframe. I was just wondering if that's still a topic that drone manufacturers are trying to solve.
Yeah, just that. The redundancy in the propellers, like that's the only thing that we really do and the redundancy and power.
Yeah.
We don't have any sparks or anything like that. We've never had an issue.
Yeah, I think that there was like at one point dreams of doing things like what Flyability does with their drone in a cage, where you can fly inside of areas that have gases and things that are in the air and not worry about igniting anything. And I just didn't know if like the use cases that within the Skyfront family of use cases, if you're able to fly in hazmat situations and not have to worry about that sort of thing.
I don't think so. We've never seen a spark come from the aircraft.
Yeah.
But yeah, you'd have to inundate it with gas and run the test to be able to figure it out. But we've never done that.
Gotcha. Well, I did post your LinkedIn up in the chat for those that maybe are not connected with you already. Are there other places that you typically interact with people? Obviously, there's the Skyfront website, which I'll throw up there as well. But is there other places that you would want to be interacted with if people have questions?
Yeah, LinkedIn. Yeah, we chat on LinkedIn all the time. Yeah, send us an email, and we'll get back to you. And yeah, if you send me a message on LinkedIn, we'll reply.
Well, Troy, I think that like I mentioned, what you're doing for the industry and in the industry is pretty unique. There's not a lot of people that are focusing on the energy source that you are, and endurance is going to continue to be where people are going to want to see the changes. So I think that you're a pioneer in the industry, and I respect the hell out of that. Sorry that this didn't happen the first time back in April, but I'm glad we got to chat now. And if you ever need anything from me, you let me know.
Sounds good.
All right, brother. Appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Randall.
Yeah, take it easy.
All right.
Guys, that was Troy Messler from Skyfront, CEO. If you came in late, we were talking a lot about energy sources, and because that they use hybrid electric from gasoline on their airframes, it is kind of this thing where, like, for me, my I won't say prejudice, but like my first, I'm asking dumb questions, I guess is what I would say. I'm asking him dumb questions about fuel sources because it is foreign. We're so used to lithium polymer batteries in the drone industry. You just land, put another battery in. And we've gotten used to it, and it doesn't mean that we should get used to it. There is a need to not have to go back to base or go back home to change out batteries, especially in meetings like, especially in use cases like search and rescue or following some sort of suspect in security and surveillance. So I think that what Troy is able to unlock with his airframe is really impressive. I understand that educating people about what the safety implications and also to get over hurdles of cost is a significant challenge, but it's a challenge worth taking on, and chatting with Troy about that definitely educated me quite a bit. I see that Danielle's in here. I see that my boy Bobby's up in here. I see Preston and Shredda's up in here. So I really appreciate you guys sticking around. We have one more guest today, and it's Troy Nakin from Quad Standard Labs, and we're going to talk a lot about FPV flying. And I had a misconception about this too, and this just goes to show that I'm like the most naive and ignorant person in the entire drone industry. But when we were talking about FPV, like real FPV flights, I was thinking like FPV piloting for racing or whatever, but this is like a whole different level of that. And I think Troy wanted to kind of whoop my ass when I made the assumption that it was something on the lower tier, lower front of FPV flying. So I guess because Troy's here, we'll just hop over there, start having that conversation, and here we go. My man Troy. Can't hear you.
Me?
Oh, there we go. Now I can hear you. Yes, sir.
You got me? All right.
Yes, sir.
Oh, I was not mad. I didn't beat you up. I mean, I did criticize quite a few things. No, I'm just kidding. No, man. I just think it's great. First of all, thank you.
Yeah.
Also, the incredible talks that you already had today. I mean, it was like I started wanting to take notes about, man, that relates to me and this and this. And it's just so crazy, Randall, where we are today. Because like you're one of the few that I think have been in this, and correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know your full backstory, but that's the weird thing is you're one of the few like connections that I've never actually met in person. We've never really chatted a lot. I think we move in a ton of circles together, especially one particular circle. But it's just crazy how we're all here today, and our stories, if we don't already know them, like us personally, about each other, they're just the same stories, you know? I mean, the same connections, the same like passions, the same everything. Like it's just in slightly different variances.
Yeah, for sure. I think that, you know, building a community around this technology has been happening naturally. And we kind of ping, it's small. And so we ping around and know common people. I know that you know Bobby Sakaki and I go way, way back. And so it's like there's these touch points, but without like a platform or without a reason to talk, unless we bump into each other, it's a missed opportunity. And so I'm grateful for any opportunity to hear what people are doing, what they're passionate about. And then you never know when that's going to be there's going to be some matchmaking done. You introduce someone to someone else and magic happens. And that's what I live for. That's my like favorite thing in this industry.
Connecting the dots is what I consider it. And, you know, you haven't really asked, but like the way I got here, like my origin story, like you asked everybody, is the connecting of those dots. And I didn't even know I was connecting dots until I realized it. And then I started pursuing it. And like something you mentioned earlier about, you know, the opportunities, you know, I think that too many people are waiting for something to hit them in the face and like be an opportunity for them to like see it. And it's like, the opportunities are just limitless at this point. I mean, even more so every day. But like our connection, our 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon, so to speak, would actually probably be John McBride. I know you work with him, but you know, my origin starts in 2016 as far as the real, okay, this is going to be something I'm going to do. I just didn't at that time had no clue how and what it was going to be. Right. It all started with John, 2016 CES. I had an opportunity from a Chinese flight controller manufacturer. They were, some people may remember, GDUI. Funny enough, though, I worked for GDU later.
Yeah.
So GE was basically knocking off NAS 32 flight controllers and all the DJI flight controllers, and just like everybody was.
Right.
And they had offered me one to review as a hobbyist, and I reviewed it by getting it, and it didn't work with any of the hardware I had. And I basically complained and told them it sucked and I didn't want it and they could have it back. I then brokered somehow me sending it to some dude in Canada to test. And then they offered me a job like 3 months later, randomly. And I'm like, I'm a chef. I'm like doing my own career. I'm working 60, 80 hours a week, but like knowing I wanted to do this. And I'm like, this is a troll. This is a fake job. This is a scam. Like, what is this Chinese company saying? So I was just real with them. I said, I have a job. I work 60 hours a week. If you want to offer me something, give me specifics. Is this a contract? What's the dollar amount? What do you want? And we can talk. Otherwise, I don't want anything to do with it. I mean, I was just me about it, right? And they said, well, we really do want to hire you as basically our salesperson for the US. I'm like, yeah, I haven't even flown the gear. Again, I've given the gear up. I said, I don't want it.
Right.
But we want you, could we talk to you at CES? And I'm like, I'm not going to CES. I work. Well, would you work for us at CES? I'm like, $250 a day plus travel and sure. Okay. I'm like, okay. Yeah. Like a couple of weeks later, I mean, it took a little while navigating, getting the money, but I literally told them I wasn't buying plane tickets until I had the cash. They gave me the cash, and I went to CES 2016 with this no clue what was going to happen. But I was a 3DR solo dude that had one of the first 30 in the nation. So I was the guy that was the first one to pretty much discover the GPS flaw that they had to fix early on. I had to go to 3DR and meet Colin and get a brand new unit so Philip could like have mine sent to Berkeley. Like I had already had like this little insight because I had been doing the 3DR solo work and it had gotten me like some status in the YouTube community. My channel had just blown up from 400 users to 4,000. And I was just like, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to go to CES. I'm going to make video content and I'm going to just figure it out. And I got put next to, actually funny, you talked to this other guy, the guys you did before, Troy from the hybrid technology. My booth was catty corner to what was Pro Drone at the time, next to Tiger, what was it? Tiger RC or whatever.
RC.
John was
Taiwan.
working for at the time.
Yeah.
And then Jin Smart. So Jin Smart was at the Walkera booth right across from me. And Jin Smart was the first hybrid drone I ever saw. And I spent the whole week just like talking to these folks and like walking around and meeting people. And this was at the start of these social networks coming together in 2016 of kind of being the place for drone people, right? And so I just kind of hung out for the week, and I was recognized by a lot of people because of the 3DR solo content. And I had an entrepreneur start walking by the booth one day. I had no idea he was an entrepreneur, but just some dude walking up at late on like a Wednesday. And I had been spieling my spiel all day, and I was just over it. And I was like, ugh, one more. Okay, fine, Troy, do it. So I did my little, I had basically a handheld cell phone gimbal. I'm like, oh, you tired of that bouncy cell phone footage? Like, check this out. And these were new at the time. This was like, everybody was on this stuff. So he stopped and he looked and he's like, hey, I know you. And I was like, okay. And he's like, you're on YouTube. But he's like, I have more footage of Necker Island than 3DR does themselves. And I'm like, I don't even understand what the reference was, right? Like, I'm like, okay, bro, what the fuck's Necker Island? Right. Little did I realize, he then pulls out his phone and he shows me this video of him standing next to Richard Branson on the balcony at the island. And there's like 20 people around and they're all wearing this t-shirt that says 500 below. And then the drone pulls back and it flies around the island. And he's like, yeah, dude, I'm part of this blah, blah, blah. I go every couple times a year. And then my company, and I'm like, dude, this is crazy. And so long story short, we talked for a little while and he's like, I'd love to spend some more time with you. Like, what are you doing tonight? So I invited him to the multi-GP race that the guys, Harris and Gale, were putting on, the XDC, the second one, XDC. They came and hung out, and then they invited me out for the night, like to go party. And this is funny. I said no. Like, I had a job to do the next morning, really early in the morning. And I was like, I can't go. I'm sorry. I'm obligated to do the work that they're paying me to. I'd love to go party, but it's too late, man. Like, it was like 12 o'clock. They wanted me to meet them at like 1 o'clock in the morning. And I'm like, I got to be somewhere at 6.
Right.
So I said no. And, he texted back and said, I guess you'll have to meet my board members another time. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, what did I just do? Why did I not go? It's going to be the craziest night of my life. And I went and I did my job and I left. And, I texted him one time when we were leaving and he texted back, said, have a safe trip. We'll talk soon. And I'm like, okay, whatever. So like, I go home and I tell my wife, like, there's something going on in this space. I want to stop working 60, 80 hours a week in the restaurant and figure out how to transition to this. And if I can before the end of the year, great. If not, I'm going and dedicating myself to being, a consultant, something other than a chef and running a day-to-day restaurant business, because that I can do and I was doing really well, but I didn't want to do it anymore. And so I wanted to consult at the very least. Like, that was always the goal in the restaurant industry, was to like teach people how to run good restaurants and good food and like what the problems were and spotting them and stuff. So she's like, okay, like whatever. And I actually thought I was going to work for 3DR at the time. Like, I still was talking to Philip a lot, and 3DR was still going a little bit. And I was like, maybe I end up working for these guys. Like, there was an FPV project that people didn't know about that 3DR considered right before shutting down, that I happened to know the people involved with. And I was like, maybe this is going to be the thing. Well, it wasn't. But 3 months later, I got a random call and it said, hey, Troy, I want you to come out to Nashville and take a look at a product that I'm building. And I think that you'd be a good fit to help me do. And so I went out and, the guy that told me, let's go out, and I said no to it, flew me out to Nashville one day. And it ended up being, that he was a drone enthusiast. He had bought, had money. And so he's buying toys and playing with stuff. And he liked to fly drones, but he also had a lot of problems when he flew drones, like crashing them, like not knowing what filters to buy, not knowing how to do certain things with the drone. And he wanted answers and he didn't know how to find them. So he created an application that was going to connect to drone users in 2016. So you could basically go on and you could build a profile. Sounds familiar? You could build a profile and you could say, I fly this equipment, pick the drone, pick the very specific. I mean, we were in the Phantom 3 days. So, did you have an FC40 or did you have a Phantom 2 or did you have a Phantom 3? And which Phantom 3 did you have? And it moved into the Phantom 4 territory too. Did you have a 3DR solo? So you build your profile with exactly what hardware you know you're familiar with, and certain topics that you think you can help people with. And then it was basically, we described it as the Uber for drones. You get on the app, you say, I need help with this drone, with this thing, with this question, and it pings 3 people. And the first one to respond gets basically paid to help that person navigate whatever problem using video, chat, pictures, whatever. And it was brilliant at the time, but it was also way ahead of the game. And I kind of was like everyone, I'm very upfront with like, man, this may be, this going to be a big hill, but if we can get it to work, there was traction there. There was something that was going to work, but it had to all really work. And the problem ended up being that the software development at the time, before I was even brought in to just help run it, that software development at the time, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay. Started having a lot of changes. So anybody in mobile development knows in around 2016, the shift to a lot of different ways of handling video and text and picture messaging, and having a hybrid app instead of native apps on each phone for Android and Apple made it very difficult to continue to develop and continue to try to spin out the features we wanted, because they kept changing and breaking other things. So at any rate, it came to a point to where it became a little bit of a money pit, and was like, hey, let's slow down, let's pivot to something else. So I had to move on and go do something else, which is where I went to work for GDU. And they happened to be hiring in town to hire a body to be their support person and help develop and launch new product into the market and understand the US market. So I wowed them by telling them that their product was horrible. They took too long to put it out, and they need to not chase DJI. When they asked me, how do they compete with DJI? And I said, you don't. You find your own niche and you make something they didn't, and you do it really well. And if the customers buy it, then you succeed, and then they're going to copy you, right? So at any rate, they hired me. I told them all the wrong things, and they said, hey, can we pay you? So they hired me, and I worked for them for a good year and a half. Learned a ton, like what you talked about earlier, working for a company that's from China. Whether they have an office in the US or not, the people in the office are usually nationals from China, and most of the Americans, if anybody, there was 2 of us really that worked for the company that were Americans, one PR guy and me. So yeah, hey Troy, tell us all the things we need to know, and you tell them, and they go, cool, that's great. And then 2 weeks later, they launch the product as is, right?
Yeah, 100%.
It quickly became a situation after about a year where I'm like, I'm seeing the industry take off. Like, I'm seeing all of the segments now in 2017-ish, 18 start blowing up into their own little things, right? Bobby Watts is doing his thing, and Inspired Flight, and again, I'm inside that side of it, but FPV at that point was my hobby. I wasn't working on it, and I was actually pitching it to GDU at times. I'm like, you should make a headset. You should make a drone compatible with a headset. It doesn't have to be an FPV drone. Like, you should do these things because it's immersive situations with drones are going to be a thing. And I gave them 3 ways that even today nobody's done that you could benefit and make money off of just drones with an immersive experience. I don't even want to say, but just randomly around the world. There's a couple of different ways there, very easily. So at any rate, I worked for them, and I quickly saw that like it was passing me. Like, I was basically back in the restaurant industry where it was like I loved it, I enjoyed it, but this one, it was the opposite. I wasn't working enough, so I was doing really no work. So I'm not developing anything new and helping anybody and doing anything of benefit. And then the rest of the industry is, and I'm like, that's not where I want to be. So I got a random call from, a company that, was a friend of mine, had his own FPV company. And he said, look, this guy came to me and he asked us to do something. I did it, but now they want to take it steps further, and I don't even know where to begin. And it's too much work. And they've paid me money that they've already, we've already spent, and they've already, we've done the work for. I don't know what to do. So I'm like, okay, let's talk. So I went out and I talked to them, and, basically they had a client that wanted to build an FPV drone brand. And they wanted to And they had already locked up some big name people to align their products with, which were DR1. It was a racing series at the time. And they wanted to take 3 concept drones and mass produce them in the United States, basically in Texas. And so how do you do that? And so I sat down at my desk for 2 days at GDU and I built a proposal for how I would break that business down based on my experience running restaurants and how you manage recipes, which is like a BOM, and you manage people and their expectations and timelines and all those things. And how do you make things repetitively the same and quality and all that, right? So I just sat down and I did the numbers. And I'm like, if this was my business, I would break it down into 3 segments of development, production, and management, and fulfillment being part of the management side. And if that's what they want, here's the numbers and let's make it happen. And we did. He pitched it to them. They said, let's do it. And he had to hire me because he didn't know how to run what I had proposed. Right. I mean, he could have, but so at that point I got hired to, fly Rhinoceros, and I left GDU. And I went and I established an assembly line that we built in his shop, and did all the sourcing and negotiated all the sourcing and did all the recipes, so to speak, by building these build guides and testing and tuning and all the testing and all the packaging and all the different things that we had to do, all the checklists, we developed together. And we started building drones, and we built about 50 a week for a good about 25 weeks or so, about 6-8 months. And we were reaching the end of the fulfillment of the order, or the first order. Some things, again, much like the software stuff that I didn't have a hand in, just decisions that were made were probably not the best. And we ran with those decisions based on the client's choice. And, the product it didn't end up selling as well as the client wanted. And then some other things started popping up with production that we had varying ideas on what the problems were and how to resolve them and who needed to resolve them and that. And so right around this time, professional FPV starts taking off. And this is where I recognized it in 2018. And I'm like, pilots are turning into cam operators, but cam operators that are currently flying drones are going to need to turn into FPV pilots, because there's not enough FPV pilots out there that are, first of all, understand that they need to be a cam op, let alone have the skills and the wherewithal to learn a whole new skill set like being a cam op in order to properly fly a cam on a proper set. So around that time, I'm seeing that professional tools are a thing and need to be a thing, but nobody's selling and aiming things at, I'm not looking at you hobbyists. I'm not trying to be the cheapest on the sites. We're going to build these things, sell them for these prices, and make sure that the professionals using them have access and after sales support to use the tools. And I kind of pitched it to my boss at the time. I said, look, this is what I want to do. He bought in enough to send me to CES in 2019. And we did that. And I got laughed at most folks that I went around and said, we want to carry cinema cameras without a gimbal on a drone. And we want to fly it in an immersive way that's impossible to do with anything else. Mm-hmm. And companies were like, it'll never get done. It'll never be done. And that was January 2019. And within 2 months, I had left Rhinoceros because things just weren't working out. We had started to launch the first professional drone for RTF, which was, I made a deal with Andy Shin at Shin Drones, and we were the exclusive ready-to-fly bind and fly provider for squirt builds, for the little Cinewhoop that everybody started with back then. And Andy only allowed us to make bind and flies and ready-to-flies. And so we had started that production, and then kind of things fell out, and I decided to leave the company. And at that point, I didn't know what I was going to do. Like, I might go back to chef work. I don't even know. But luckily, a lot of people that I spoke to within the space industry and just around me just kept saying, Troy, you can just start your own, do your own thing, because what you've done for everybody else, you can do for more people, and you can do it under your own kind of thing and make it what you want, and you can be happy with it. Dude, okay. So I started the company in April of 2019. April 4th, I filed the paperwork, and then I was at AUVSI, I think about 2 weeks later, in Chicago. And I flew in for the day. Monica England, another one of those random connections in the space, gave me a ticket to get in for free with her company. And I literally got in at 6:30 a.m., was at the show when it opened, and I left about 4:30 to catch a flight home, and I was on a late flight home. And started the company, and it was Quad Standard Labs. I was going to leverage all of my network and everything I did to either help manage production of other people's products or development of their products in this kind of space of anything, like anything drone related. Or we were also going to start building professional FPV tools. I wasn't able to build the tools that we were going to build at Flydo because I negotiated an exclusive deal, but I was able to start building other tools and quietly do some things in the background that eventually the deal with Flyno had, and then Flynoceros going out of business, allowed me to not worry about any, non-compete agreements or anything previous.
Lost sound.
Went there and I'm back. Sorry.
Yeah.
I went there and I told people, this is my brand. I can do consulting. I can do lots of different things. And we started the company by coming back and getting a few calls from AUVSI, where we started helping develop hardware. We started helping develop people's software. And then FPV was just the background noise all the way up until COVID.
Right.
And COVID killed everything that wasn't FPV. And everything that was FPV took off because everybody was sitting at home, and they were production teams, and they were, cam operators, and they were producers and directors, and even writers, and people that are storyboarding stuff and going, what's this stuff we keep hearing about? I have all the time in the world because we're all sitting at home, nothing to do. How do I make myself better for my own industry and my own product when I go back to work? And that's when the floodgates open. We just literally haven't stopped since people got home and had the time to realize there were companies out there building professional tools that would help them figure out how to use them. And really all the side projects went away for about a year and a half. And we just started developing and selling anything. So anything somebody uses that they prove is usable in a professional way that's FPV related, we tried to do it. We try to build it. We try to work with that partner, that company, say, hey, can we buy your frames? Can we build them? Can we use your products? Whatever it is that's coming out and evolving, we're just trying to help support and give access to the professionals that are the ones that are able to pay the extra dollars to make it actually worth it for all of us to continue to develop, rather than just try to sell stuff for the bottom dollar, like in the hobby side of stuff. So the brand's doing really well. We're doing really great. And we've now actually brought on other companies back to the beginning that are now not FPV related, that are wanting autonomous drones, intrinsically safe drones to do this. I got a message today that somebody wants to do interior fly-throughs, autonomously. They want to know how they can do that, Right. So these are the calls we get to have on a daily basis. And a lot of them, like Troy said from Skyfront, I'd say 90% of them, we're able to give them some sort of proof of concept idea and a cost to it. And then 10% of them are these, pie in the sky. We're going to use a drone to do everything. How do I get one to fly for 4 hours and fly through a home and go chase a bad guy at the same time? It's
Right.
like, there's lots of layers to that. I need Dawn on the phone first. Is this even legal?
Right.
So I'll shut up. That's my story.
No, it's a good story, and I appreciate you sharing the depths of it, because I think that what happens is when someone says, like, here's the companies I worked, there's no story in that. You can kind of see like a linear path of some sort, but it makes sense how you got to this place where you're doing something that for my world is quite unique. I don't really bump into FPV a ton, but as you're talking about professionals, you kind of, at first I was like, professionals meaning camera operators, meaning cinematography folks, but you're talking about professionals that are using this immersive drone experience in the industrial space as well.
Well, so yes, we've done some work with clients that want to use FPV in those ways. Typically, so when I say professionals, for me, professional just means you're making money with your tools.
Yeah.
And you're invested in that as not just making money with it. So not just dude that goes and flies like their Phantom to capture footage on an app, that they're not doing anything other than just basically putting the drone up and framing something, right? They're pushing a button. I mean, I'm not saying they're not doing anything, but it's not genuinely a full skill. Like, is there a workflow skill to that? Possibly, but you get where I'm going with this. Now,
Yeah.
the person that is, however, using a Mavic, and they're going and they're doing real estate photography, and they're also are videography outside and drone work, and they're also doing the groundwork, and they're also doing the virtual staging, and they're also doing all these other things, right? Like, those are the professional. That's a professional that's using and leveraging all they can to continue to build themselves and their product, which is usually, in that situation, it's a freelance type of product, right? Like, it's a Ken Dono, it's a
Right.
I mean, I got plenty of them. Nick Lang, like, these guys are building their name and their freelance name, and then they're also getting contracted and hired on to do other projects once they show, again, like, these are those professionals that when they have time, they're constantly perfecting their skills. So our clients go from anywhere from freelance, like real estate, or even just, local business, marketing type person that
Yeah.
wants something new and fresh, that they're using drones, or they want to use drones. Most of them have drone experience, which is, that's where 60% of the companies in my situation, when they hear a person say, I want to fly FPV and I've got so much drone experience, I've been flying DJIs for 10 years. Most of them laugh and go, ugh, like, okay, here, buddy, get this, I have a conversation with that person where the first thing I tell them is, that's great that you fly it. And knowing the relationship of a drone flying in the air and stick movement to a degree is okay. It's not a prerequisite, though, and it's not going to get you anywhere with FPV very fast. What it is going to do is give you some confidence in the fact that you have equipment in the air flying, which is a big part of FPV. Confidence is probably the biggest thing. So you got to have confidence in yourself, confidence in the gear, and confidence in the situation that you're going to succeed at what you're trying to do, right? And the situation is about being on the ground and researching and making sure where you're flying is a safe place to fly. The equipment is where we come in. We can provide you a drone build and all the equipment and gear that you need to use that drone. What we can't do is hold your hand in how to learn how to fly it. But we can give you some tips and we can give you some advice. And that advice is, forget everything DJI to a degree. Go get a simulator radio, and first just try to keep a simulator drone in the air. Don't worry about how fancy it looks, how smooth it is, how great it looks. Just try to keep it flying around, in a big open space. If you can do that, that's all I need you to simulate. Because the next thing is 2 or 3 weeks later, we're going to get you the drone. You're going to take the drone, you're going to go put it out in an open field in front of you, nose out, so left is left, right is right, forward is forward, back is back, and you're just going to try to keep it off the ground, not high. You're not going to, oh my gosh, going higher isn't easier. Going higher means a harder fall, and it's still going to break, if not more. So just trying to hover it and just literally teaching yourself. The part that people don't get is FPV is not hard once you train your brain, your hands, and your eyes all working together to see the drone line of sight just moving. Just seeing it move a little bit with what you're doing teaches your brain. Just like throwing a ball, they tell you to watch the ball. It's not because you can change the ball's movement by watching it. It's because when you throw the ball and you watch the ball and the movement that it makes, it teaches your brain to adjust its movements in throwing the ball again to either replicate or change the pattern, right? So it's the same thing, line of sight with a drone. You're not doing it to be the best, awesome line of sight pilot. You're just teaching your brain. You don't even have to be comfortable with it. I was never comfortable with line of sight, even to this day, where I do every drone line of sight for at least a few seconds before we go put goggles on it, right? So once you've learned that, it's just about going and getting the bumps and the bruises. Put the goggles on and go try it. And just, again, stay within a linear height. Just try not to go super high. Be in an open space. Fly the same place every day, as often as possible, as many times as possible, standing in the same place, facing the same direction, flying the same routes, and eventually your confidence just clicks one day. And it just all kind of comes together. And you're like, man, I can go do this anywhere. And then you can. Or you're just not that type of person that's ever going to be able to learn to fly FPV, which does happen.
Yeah.
I've had probably 3 out of 300 that have come back later and been like, Troy, it's just not for me. I want to sell the gear.
So,
yeah.
I was going to ask, for Quad Standard Labs, do you do pilot work yourselves? Like, do you
Nope.
go out? So
Not me.
you're enablers.
Yeah, we don't.
You enable these pilots by giving them the hardware that they need and some semblance of training ish. But that's not.
Yeah, we point them in the direction of you need to go learn these things. If you've got questions, we'll definitely answer your questions. Hey, Troy, do I need a crossfire radio? We'll have that discussion.
Right.
And I'll give you my advice for you. I'll give you my thoughts. And I'll even give you what my recommendation for that individual is. But it's also, if you want it, tell me and we'll fix it. And we'll get it implemented into your drone, right? At the end of the day, no, I don't personally fly. We have contractor employees. So, we don't have any full-time employees still because we're just still about to hit those growth spurts of getting some contracts signed with some of these companies behind the scenes that nobody will ever know about.
Yeah.
But as we get those things going, I have guys that work for me that both are 107 pilots. One is kind of more of an inspections dude, and the other one's an FPV and can do inspections. So they both do that work on the side and all that. We have a few local clients that we sell drones to. We purposely are not very well known locally because I'm not trying to be a drone store locally, but we do help service some of those folks when they need help. But we do have some clients locally that we point people to. I got a call last week. Hey, Troy, I need a pilot that can fly this type of camera at this, on these days. Do you know anybody local? And we point them in those directions, right? We're connecting those dots. At some point, we probably will offer referral pilot systems. I know, your Pixel Pay stuff, man, the stuff everybody's working on. I think that's really interesting because I've had conversations with folks where I think there's a need for something like that, and I think that that's the type of stuff that's going to lead to connecting more people. But yeah, we don't do the flying ourselves. We consult on what do you need to do whatever application of FPV work you're doing, and it's again runs the gambit of people that know what they're doing and they just don't want to build because they don't have the time. They're out there perfecting their craft and doing work.
Yeah.
And these guys they can build their own stuff, but they'd rather say, Troy, here's a check, or here's let me pay the bill. And in that number of days, it shows up at their door. They can go do a few test flights and they can go out and fly and have confidence in it, right? So really, that's where we're at with that stuff. And then, development. We're always interested in anybody wanting to do something crazy or cool or different. Ask us and let's see what we can come up with. That's always fun too. So.
Someone asked earlier about the Drone Lounge logo and I guess sticker or whatever it is on your wall. What's the story behind that?
The Drone Lounge, as it says here, was established in 2017, not here in this location. Daniel Abear is the Drone Lounge king, I suppose. The Drone Lounge was started in 2017 that I got invited to. That was a handful of people at the time. I think less than 100, maybe less than 200. That were a lot of the movers and shakers, a lot of the folks that were doing different things in the space in different ways, but we're also very like-minded. We're all kind of fun-loving, free spirits that like to rouse, kind of roast each other a little bit and roast others and roast the public, but in our own private way, because if we were to, I have no problem roasting people in public too often, but there's a lot of people out there that they're professionals and they are names at companies that they can't be seen talking bad about something possibly, and maybe they want to make a joke. They go do it in the Drone Lounge. We all laugh. We have a good time with it. We usually make fun of them too for making the joke. And then, it's just a fun group. So when I got the shop, this is the lounge area. We've got 2,300 square feet here, but this is I'm sitting in what is actually my kind of day office. So it's the lounge area. I put the sticker on the wall there, and I called Daniel up and said, send me the image. I'd love to have the actual Drone Lounge here in Austin. Yeah. So people, when they do come by, we have to get a picture if they know about it, and we get a picture of it. But yeah, I'll show you really quick. That's the lounge. So that's my day shop area. So it's actually my big computer monitor. I got a computer, and this is where I do all the setting up and the testing of stuff before we go flight test. And then we've got 2,300 square feet here of stuff. We've got some stuff that we do in here. It's one of our build rooms for a client build that we do quite a bit. This is kind of overflow for that room. We've got a build area over here. It's our main build room. I've got Nathan here today working over there doing some assembly work. I'm actually doing some solder work on a big drone here. And then we've got a bunch of stuff that's ready for me. This is all stuff that's got to go over to that other desk and get set up and test flown and all that. And then we've got some build area over here. This is Scott. He's actually working on a refresh for a client. So this drone came in dirty, broken, and not working, and we got to fix it and get it sent back out to the client. We've got robots doing 3D print work all the time. And then I think the guys are messing with the CNC and laser room right now. We're doing some rearranging. So that's that. Hey guys. So that's that. That's our space, our charging area. Some more space. We got inventory and shipping. But anyways, yeah, that's the spot, man. So we're just here every day, plunking away, man.
Yeah.
Building whatever it takes, you know?
Well, I love all that you shared, man. I mean, like, we don't have like you said before, we have degrees of separation. We know a lot of the same people, but really haven't interacted that much. So to hear your story, to hear what you're up to, has been great. I posted your LinkedIn in the chat for people to follow you and keep up with what you're doing. Is there anywhere else that people should, I mean, obviously the Quad Standard Labs
our
website.
Quad Standard Labs website is a great place to go, only because I always point people there because there's a couple of ways to contact us. There's always, almost on every page at the very top, set up a call.
Yep.
So if you want to have a call with us, set it up there. You can pick your time and date, and we get on a phone. We do that quite often. So I love pointing people there. Also, there's a quick chat box down there too that sends me a chat and an email request pretty quickly that I usually respond to. Ultimately though, yeah, I mean, that's the spot, or Instagram. We try to post as much as we can. We share a lot of our client stories just because, you know, I'm not out there putting these things to work. So a lot of the times we rely on
2020
clients.
draft is Johnny Davis.
Let me tell you about Johnny Davis. This kid is special with a capital S. He's an incredible shooting guard.
The toasted cheddar chalupa is back, only at Taco Bell.
Before we hop off?
You know, just find something that you think you can do if you want to do it, and do it. I mean, it's an amazing time to be part of anything right now, and there's lots of things that need more parts to it, right? Like that's the part that I don't know. I know that sounds so enigmatic while also being like, you know, it's just go do something, yo. If this is what you want to do, you want to be involved in anything, just get out and go do it. Yeah. I mean, it's not going to hit you in the face, but something around, look for those opportunities and, you know, talk to people. I mean, that's what got me where I am, is learning what everybody else wanted to know, talking about what I was doing, and just finding the alignment in those dots.
For sure.
So yeah, that's about it.
Well, going from culinary to quads, it seems like a huge jump, a huge leap of faith, and we're glad that you did it because the industry is better for it. So I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me, my man, and I'm sure we'll chat again soon.
Awesome. You have a great day.
Yeah, take it easy.
Bye.
See you, Troy. Guys, that was Troy Nakan from Quad Standard Labs. Great chat. Great guy. Definitely has a personality that shines through the computer screen. So I really appreciate him spending some time with us. For me, I have been sick. I have been subtly trying to keep my nose from running out of my face. So I am going to sign off. I really, really appreciate you guys being here. Please be here next week. I'll put together another lineup of fantastic guests that we'll be talking to. But until then, take it easy, stay safe, and reach out anytime if there's anything I could do for you. Take care, guys.